Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 6 years. And today I'm here to tell you I was wrong. Over the last few years, I have been posting about my experiences living here in the UK. I've been posting them on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching them. If you've been around for a while, wow, it's been a long time, hasn't it? And to be honest, a lot of my opinions about British culture, about life in the UK, about just, everyday things that I have spoken about in previous videos, I have now come to learn that, in fact, I was wrong. If you like this video and you want to see more videos of what it's truly like being a foreigner living in the UK, please consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's go. Number one on our list of all the ways that I was wrong, I was wrong about cooking. I'm so sorry. When I first moved to the UK, I hated, and I'm deeply sorry, but I hated using scales for cooking and baking. All the recipes were done with scale measurements. You need 75 grams of butter. You need 15 grams of sugar. And that really bothered me because in North America, typically when you're at home, you're cooking, you're baking, you're using cups. And that's just what I was used to. So when I made the switch to scales, at first I hated it. And I reflected on this. And I have since changed my mind. Using scales is so much easier. Like obviously it's quite a bit more specific, but frankly it's just easier. So I was wrong about that. I am deeply sorry. It was just something that was so ingrained. Like even my chef friend from back home in Ontario sent me a lovely set of measuring cups that I could use in my kitchen here in England. It's just ingrained. So at first, I really hated the scales, but I've changed my mind. Number two on the ways that I was wrong was saying the date. When I first moved here, I was really confused about the date because the date format, as you may know, is different in North America than in the UK. So in the UK, you go typically smallest to largest. So the 8th of August, 2022, 8/08/2022. In Canada, typically you go August 8th. I shouldn't have used a date that has the same August 19th, 2022. So we would write it as 08/19/2022 or 22, whatever. And because this is so deeply ingrained in me, that's what we were raised doing, that's what we were taught at school to write the date. That's also how we say the date. So most Canadians would say August 19th rather than the 19th of August. So you write August 18. Here in the UK, most people will write, 19 August. Anyway, I've changed my mind. Obviously, it makes so much sense that you go smallest to largest. Of course it makes sense. I do remember early on having a problem with this, specifically at the gym. I went to a gym, I was getting registered. You have like an induction and they show you, where the machines are and the changing rooms and all the rest of it. And the guy was filling out my details, your contact information, your name for your membership. And he asked me date of birth. And without thinking, I said, I obviously not gonna tell you guys. I said, let's come up with a date. I said June 9th, 1990 ? And he was so confused because I said June 9th that it took him a second. He's like, wait a second. Oh, you mean, because the form was obviously the other way around. So he's like, oh, you mean 9 June 1990 ? So I now have this problem when I go back to Canada and I see a form that needs a date or it needs like an expiry date or something. It always throws me because I'm like, okay, wait. Is this asking for the day first or is this the month first? It always takes a second, but I am converted. I think the British way of the smallest to largest, the 9th of June is just so much easier. Another thing I was deeply wrong about was tea. And I'm so sorry for making fun of you guys. I did not come from a tea drinking family. I don't think I've ever seen either of my parents had tea ever. We just were not a tea family. So coming to the UK, tea was like something absolutely not on my radar. I just wasn't interested. But over the years, it's kind of crept in. And now after being here for 6 years, I do enjoy a cup of tea. Specifically Yorkshire, if you have it, that would be divine. Just a little bit of milk, no sugar, thank you. I still wouldn't say that I am a tea person. I have coffee every day. I am still a coffee person, but tea has become part of my drinking options, if you will, especially in the wintertime. Here in the UK, oh my goodness, it gets so dark, so wet and cold and pretty miserable in the wintertime. There is something that's very comforting about having a cup of tea. You know, it's 3:30 p.m. It's already dark outside. You have a nice big warm cup of tea. It is very soothing. But I'm not someone yet who has tea just like whenever. Like summertime, I'm nowhere near tea. Not even close. Maybe that'll change in a couple years. Who knows? But I was wrong about tea. And I'll admit that. Next one, how's the weather? So for this, I used to tease the British people about talking about the weather, asking about the weather. I definitely made fun of you guys, and I'm deeply sorry because now I do it all the time. Maybe I'm just getting old. It could be that I'm just getting old. But it is a good tip for fellow expats, immigrants, whatever you want to call yourself. If you are here in the UK, whenever you're in doubt and you're not really sure like what to say, or there's like an awkward pause, or maybe you're at the bus stop and someone's like kind of talking to you and you don't really know what to talk about, just talk about the weather. Because honestly, it works. I do catch myself now talking about the weather, asking about the weather in a non-ironic way, which is quite a little bit alarming and also a little bit surprising. So I definitely was wrong. The weather here does change quite quickly. So it's a national pastime, really, talking about the weather. And now I do it as well. Another thing that I was wrong about life here in the UK is British food. I think it's pretty easy to make fun of the Brits for their particular cuisine. Things are often brown, that is true. It's a cuisine of many beige and brown items, but I will say it is actually pretty good. I think a lot of the British foods that are very easy to make fun of tend to be the most traditional, like the oldest ones, and realistically, very few people are actually actively eating that stuff. I guess depending on which age group you're talking to, but typically the stuff that's the weirdest and like the, oh my God, what, tends to be the most traditional, tends to be food that people don't normally eat anymore. But even things that have a bad reputation like haggis, I did a haggis taste test video on Patreon, and guess what? I loved it. Pork pies, Scotch eggs, Yorkshire pudding, toad in the hole, Sunday roast, a full English fry up. I mean, there's so much. They're all quite heavy foods, perhaps maybe not the most healthy, but I do love them. I actually used to do a lot of cooking and baking videos. There's still some on my channel, but they never were that popular. I guess YouTube viewers were like not that interested. So I still really like to cook and bake a lot of traditional British stuff. I just post that on Patreon instead because it doesn't seem to be like that exciting for YouTube. That's totally fine. But a lot of the stuff that I have made, I am shocked that I actually like it. Stuff like, one that stands out was sticky toffee pudding. I thought for certain that I wouldn't like, but I made it anyway on Patreon because I really like making things, A, that I've never made before, but also I've never tasted like a homemade version before, or maybe even tasted it at all. So I made sticky toffee pudding on Patreon and I was shocked at how much I actually like it. So yeah, it is easy to make fun of British cuisine and some of it deserves to be made fun of for, okay? Especially down here in Kent, I'm looking at you, jellied eels. Come on, what were you thinking? But overall, the food is pretty good, all right? A lot of browns, a lot of beiges, not necessarily the most healthy. I would love to know, what's the healthiest British food you can think of? leave a comment down below. Another thing that I was wrong about, that I will admit, about life here in the UK, is public transportation actually works. So I personally, from Ontario, Canada, I come from a country where public transportation sucks. It only is possible if you are in like a town center or a city center, but for the rest of us, like in the suburbs, public transportation is basically like non-existent. And I'll be honest, when I first arrived here, I really didn't have high hopes. And it's also kind of scary because I'd never like taken the bus. I think I took the bus once in Canada. So moving to a foreign country, I'm like, I need to take the bus to work. Awkward question. How does the bus work? How do you buy a ticket? How do you know where it's going? Or how do you know when to get off? Like, it was a little bit frightening because I really didn't know. I didn't have any experience using it. Same with the trains, really no experience. But I was definitely blown away by the fact that it is possible to get around on public transport. A couple years ago, I sold my car. So I used to drive. I started out doing public transport, then I got a car and I was driving, then I've sold the car and I've gone back to using public transport, and it's actually doable. It's not perfect, and I've definitely had situations where my train was canceled or indefinitely delayed and they didn't know it was going to show up, or it's swelteringly hot and the heating is still on in the carriage and you're like, why is this happening? Or you're trying to get someplace and there's no real route that you can take that doesn't take like 4 hours and like 5 different connections to get there. That's a bit tricky, but it is possible to get around. And honestly, it's something that I don't ever want to take for granted because it's something that I just don't have access to in Canada. I definitely think in the future, between you and me, in the future, I think I would really love if money wasn't an issue, a stone cottage like out in the countryside, I think would be truly wonderful. Probably can't use public transport in that situation, so I definitely go back to having a car. And even if the stone cottage dream doesn't work out, fingers crossed, I probably will still get a car in the future, but knowing that you can get by without one is wonderful. Another thing that I was wrong about when I first moved to the UK are the British people. Yeah, it's you guys. Now, coming from Canada, Canadians typically, not all, but typically are extremely personable and like friendly and talkative, and they'll talk to strangers. And it's not just like small talk either, like about the weather. Like they'll really get into a conversation with a stranger. And coming from a country that does that kind of stuff to the UK, specifically down in the southeast, which I know everyone says the southeast is the worst for this, but hold that thought. I kind of got the impression that people were a bit standoffish, a bit reserved, a bit less likely to jump into a conversation with a stranger. But yeah, it kind of felt like, standoffish is probably the best word. But I do think now, having been here a while, have British friends, know more British people, have more experience here in the UK, I think it's more that people are just so polite that they don't want to be annoying. So they don't know if you want to strike up a conversation, and they don't want to do that and then offend you or be annoying or like overstep a boundary. Do you know what I mean? I find that they tend to be quite polite. And again, I am talking primarily for English people in Kent. I know English people up north, the Northerners, love to remind me that they are much more approachable, much more friendly than the Southerners. Although if you have to remind people, does that make it not true? Oh, that's controversial, isn't it? Northerners love to tell me how nice they are. And fair. I've only ever traveled up north. I've never worked up north, so I can't say. But I do think that certain types of people that I've come into contact with that feel a bit standoffish, feel a bit more reserved, it's typically more because they're just so polite, they don't want to bother you. So I was wrong about that. And I do think that once a British person knows, like, yes, we have some sort of friendship, yes, let's hang out, let's chat, they certainly open up a lot more. Okay, the next thing that we need to talk about, and it is more relevant now than ever, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, it's aircon. I know. So here's the thing, and I'm not completely wrong on this, all right? So before you go crazy in the comments, hear me out. If you have watched almost any of my videos, you will probably have heard me complain that the UK largely does not have aircon, and it's something that always kind of bothers me. However, now, truly, I do get it. Realistically, the UK doesn't get hot enough, long enough to warrant having the infrastructure for aircon, specifically in homes, okay? I get it. Doesn't mean that I like it, but I do get it. Unfortunately, lately, I don't know if you've seen the news, but the UK has had quite a bit of a heat wave. We're talking like 35 and up with no relief whatsoever. Those types of temperatures can get quite dangerous. So it's a bit scary because, you know, you don't have anything built into your house to help with that, if you know what I'm saying. We don't have aircon at home, but I do understand on average why we don't have it. Two things though, I did find, so I went back and I was watching some of my oldest videos to see like what kind of stuff I talked about and how I was wrong. And there are so many from the summertime where I am just actively dripping sweat. Like I am so sweaty. And I do think part of it is that my body was so used to aircon, literally everywhere. And in North America, we say air conditioning. I was so used to air conditioning at home, at work, at shops, in my car, literally everywhere, that when I came to the UK, it almost was like I had to detox. And I don't think this is a real thing, but it kind of felt like it was, where I had to just acclimatize, and it took me a lot longer. So I do think now that I've been here for 6 years, I'm much more used to it. Yes, I will still complain that I am sweaty, and I am sweaty right now. But I do think that over the years of not having air conditioning, I've definitely acclimatized better. Number two, though, my second point, recently, a couple months ago, I bought my first ever aircon unit here in the UK. And honestly, it's probably been the best purchase I've ever made. So it's just a like one room type unit that you hook up to the window. So there's like a tube that goes to the window. We keep it set up in the bedroom because the place that I want to be cool and comfortable the most is to sleep. So what we've been doing through the summer and through the heat wave is kind of like struggling through the day, but getting by. And then to sleep, we use the aircon unit. Of course, it costs money to run. You know, that's a separate issue, but having a comfortable sleep is one of the most important things to me. So I'm happy to budget to be able to use that to sleep. And honestly, best purchase, especially for this summer. I have been sleeping like an angel. But I was wrong about the United Kingdom having air conditioning. I get it. We don't need it. Would I like it? Yeah, I would like it. And my little aircon unit is the most loved thing that I've ever purchased. I truly am so grateful that we finally got it, because it is a struggle. And I don't want any expats thinking that the UK doesn't get hot. It does, okay? It does. You just have to learn to struggle through it. Another thing that I was wrong about was that England doesn't feel like home. Now, I don't know if I necessarily verbalized this in any particular video, but I definitely felt it at the beginning that England, the UK, just was never going to feel like home, and I wasn't going to ever fully fit in, which is kind of horrible, but that's how it felt. But I can say now that England does feel like home. Now, so does Canada. I am very lucky that I have 2 homes, but I do feel like I actually fit into British culture, that I can call England home. I feel at home here. I feel at peace, and I really didn't think that was possible. And sometimes even now, I kind of catch myself at how lucky and privileged and grateful I am for this life. You know, I can take the train to a nearby town that has beautiful historical architecture, and I can go to my favorite coffee shop and I can have lunch with my friends, and I come home and I'm surrounded by history and new experiences. And I don't know, I just like that kind of stuff is so special because the only way I'd be able to do that is on a vacation to England. But now I can actually live it. That is my day-to-day life, which sometimes is hard to believe. I have my favorite local restaurants. I have my favorite local Chinese. I have a gym membership. I have a business here. Adventures and Naps has really turned into a full-time business. I also have a job, so I'm a little bit busy. But yeah, I just didn't think it would happen. I think it does go to show as well, if you are open-minded and you are open to new experiences and you are open to learning about a new culture and doing things the way that culture does them, whether you agree with them or not, going with the flow, just like fully experiencing it, that you can acclimatize and assimilate to something that once felt so completely foreign. So I am very lucky to call England home. England and Canada. If you like this video and you want to see more videos, which would be totally awesome, why not check out this video where I give you guys a tour of my flat. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!